That's as with 2 Floridians, that's a big deal. And also we have the CR on the floor today. So let me introduce our 2 panelists, 2 of the most senior appropriators in town on a day when the appropriations process is in full swing, depending on who you ask. Both from Southern Florida. Mario Diaz-Balart has been in Congress since 2003 and represents a district that now stretches from Miami all the way to Naples, which I was surprised to see. I didn't realize that. Mr. Diaz-Balart has a legendary family in Florida politics. His brother Lincoln, who recently passed away, and our condolences to you for that, was in Congress from 1993 to 2011. I go on TV with his brother all the time on MSNBC, so that's not a part of the political family, but still a good gig. Mr. Diaz-Balart is chair of SFOP, State and Foreign Operations.
Which we changed the name.
Right, to what?
Sure
to NSRP, National Security, State and Related Programs.
I didn't realize that.
Yep.
When was that?
Yep. Chairman Cole did that.
Okay, good. Well, that's good to know. Debbie Wasserman Schultz was elected in 2004 and represents a district just north of Mr. Diaz-Balart from the northern part of Miami to Fort Lauderdale, right?
Not anymore.
Not anymore? Your district changed?
Magic at redistricting.
Oh, wow.
All Broward County.
All Broward County, okay.
I don't represent all of Broward County,
Well,
South
yes.
Broward County.
And was the chair of the DNC from 2011 to 2016, is the ranking member on Milcon VA, and is pretty high in seniority on the panel, and is co-chair of the House Democratic Steering Committee, and that's lucky because no one ever has complaints about Democratic leadership, so your job must be very cool and stable. So government funding bill today, I'm gonna ask you, Mr. Diaz-Balart, to make the case for this CR, which extends government funding till September 30th. And I'm going to ask you probably to make the case against this CR, which will be an interesting, this is like crossfire, so go ahead.
Yeah, well, look, thanks for the opportunity. We are what we are. As appropriators, right, I wish that we would have gotten these bills done way before. We should have, but we are what we are. And right now there are 2 options, really. We're really facing 2 options. Option number 1 is a clean CR for the remaining part of the fiscal year. Option number 2 is a government shutdown. And I just think that option number 2 is so catastrophic that even though CRs are not my preference, ever, compared to shutting down the government and what that means and the impact that has, and because if anybody can tell me that there's a third option, that all of a sudden we can, in a few days, come up with and negotiate the fiscal year 25 bills. You've all heard, you've all been reporting why that hasn't moved forward and why we haven't been able to have a top line number. So those are the 2 options, and everything else is wishful thinking, and we have a responsibility to get our job done. So shutdown is not an option, in my opinion. I think it's catastrophic for everybody, for the government, for the American people. The other option is doing a CR and then getting immediately to start 2 things. If we can negotiate while we have a CR some of the appropriation bills, we could still do that, and the chairman of the committee has been saying that. But, and if not, we immediately go into the fiscal year 26 bills and hopefully get back to regular order.
Okay, why is he wrong?
Well, he's wrong because we're appropriators. First of all, thank you for having me, and it's great to be here with mi hermano. And I mean that in every sense of the word.
So they actually like each other.
We
so
do.
Let's just keep that in mind during this conversation.
We probably shouldn't say that. It's probably not good for
anybody,
Don't tell anybody.
Not good for your brand.
No.
Good.
It doesn't have to be that way. We're appropriators, and my dear friend knows better than that, because option 3, which should be option 1 always when you're appropriators and when you're Congress and protecting your authority, is making sure that we continue to negotiate. We can pass a short-term CR. We've done that multiple times in this fiscal year and do it every year. They are very close, our leadership, on the top lines, and you continue to negotiate without giving away the store to the executive branch. And respectfully, everyone here knows this is not a clean CR. This is a cut-and-run bill. That's what CR stands for. Clean CRs do just that. They push forward the current year funding and make a couple of anomalies, and that's all. This bill cuts funding, cuts guaranteed funding for our veterans. It cuts 44% out of the Army Corps of Engineers budget, and it makes other cuts as well. That's not clean, and it's irresponsible, and we have to make sure that we can avoid the cliff that this administration, that Trump and Musk inside of 2 months, have us staring down the barrel of a recession, a government shutdown, and a stock market plunge. I mean, we got to stop winning here, but there is one other option, the main responsibility of Congress, which is to make sure we pass our appropriations bills and work together to do that, sit at the table and negotiate.
But, okay, so I'll push you on one issue, which is, and I've gotten countless calls from Republicans this morning who say that we're being too easy on Democrats, because Democrats have said for years, we are not for shutdowns. And they are in control of both chambers, and they have the White House. And they say we're not going to do it short term. So, the binary in front of you is shutdown or this.
No, the Republicans control everything. If the government shuts down, it's clearly on them. If they're refusing to continue to negotiate, that's also on them. We don't have to choose between this binary presentation of an unclean CR that cuts veterans funding, cuts Army Corps funding, cuts other vital programs, and gives away the store to the executive branch. When you have a CR situation, Congress is giving up our authority. We're not, a CR doesn't have the specificity and direction on how to spend money. This just basically enables Trump and Musk to continue to rummage around all these agencies, move funding, cut programs, hurt people. And again, let's add that the 83,000 jobs they're planning to cut from the VA after the 6,000 veterans they've already fired. This is the most anti-veteran president in American history who's cut more veteran jobs than any other president. And the stock market is really not happy about his economic policy.
Stock market is not happy, I can say that,
Not happy.
yes.
And, he's telling people to hold on, a little short-term pain. When you have tariffs like he's been imposing and will impose more of in a few weeks, that's not bringing prices down. It's costing people more around their kitchen table. So none of this has to be this way. Democrats and Republicans, if they leave this to appropriators, Jake, we know how to do this. We know how to bring appropriations bills in for a landing, and that is the most preferable option that avoids cuts. We can pass a short-term CR for a month, and we can get this done.
All right,
the ball's in their court.
Now I'm going to push you, Mr. Diaz-Balart, here's my question on this. We have gotten into, on Capitol Hill, what is seemingly an endless cycle of these CRs, and just this process, from a completely objective point of view, has broken down in ways that I think, when you guys both came to Congress, you've both been here for a little bit, was unimaginable. What is going on? Why is it so screwed up?
Yeah, and that's
You see, she's really paying attention for this question.
Yeah, well, because that's been going on for a while now. And I would hate to say
course.
that. It's, as appropriators, we've been frustrated, Republicans, Democrats, on the committee with Republican and Democrat leaderships. So this has been a kind of a trend.
Yep.
We've gotten to the point where I guess, plus a lot of our colleagues, frankly, don't really understand the appropriations process.
Correct.
They confuse it. I still hear it now when they will confuse it with reconciliation, which are two totally separate issues.
Completely different
Yeah,
issues.
and that's members of Congress. There's been so much change and turnover that there's very little understanding about the appropriations process. And so, but let me just address a couple of the issues. Look, what Debbie has said about, I wish we would have done this months ago. But if the Democrats couldn't reach an agreement on a top-line number with Tom Cole and Susan Collins, you got an issue. Those are two of the most reasonable and thoughtful people in Congress. And we all know, it's been widely reported by the press, that it's because the Democrats were insisting on now putting things to control, to stop, to micromanage the President of the United States, which of course Republicans were never going to agree to. By the way, Democrats didn't agree to that when Biden was in the White House either. And so this is nothing new. And I would go back to what I said at the beginning. Cut through all the wishful thinking. We are now facing either a shutdown or a CR, and we'll see who votes the way they do. But those are, unfortunately, the two choices. We have to get back to regular order. And regular order means getting to if we can continue to negotiate after a CR for the 25 bills, great. Otherwise, we need to get to getting the bills done. Now, I don't want to point fingers, but we're all responsible for it, right? Congress is writ large. But in the House, we passed 70% of the spending bills off the floor, of the actual spending. We passed all of them out of committee. The Senate didn't do any of it. By the way, controlled by the Democrats. Would it have been different if it was controlled by the Republicans? Who knows? But those are the facts. The Senate did nothing. They didn't pass one of their bills. We passed most of the spending, all of them through committee, off the floor. That doesn't make our job any easier when one of the two dance partners, in this case the Senate, doesn't do their job at all. But again, it's a trend that we have to break.
Well, let's actually move on from this to a couple more.
Can I say one?
Yes, please.
It is
a member of Congress. You're not allowed to say no.
Thank you. It is entirely reasonable for the Congress to insist that our Article I responsibility has a sentence in whatever we pass that the executive branch needs to follow the appropriations as directed by Congress. That is not an unreasonable insistence, and it's not the top lines that were the problem. It's that Republicans, unfortunately, have decided that they're okay with I love Tom Cole, but I was aghast, and probably many people were here too, when he suggested that appropriations are just guidance or advice to the administration. No. It's our responsibility. We're elected to represent our constituents and their priorities, so we could wrap this up now if we could negotiate some language that assures what I hope all of us want is that for the things that Congress directs are actually followed by the administration. There is built-in flexibility already, but what this CR will do is not be clean. It'll give him more room to rummage around, fire thousands of people, cut vital programs that help people make sure that they can actually survive.
Let's talk for a second about DOGE, which no matter what party you're in, I think could be fairly described as a challenge to and a challenge for appropriators. It basically, Elon Musk's efforts basically have implicit in them that the Appropriations Committee hasn't done its job in overseeing these programs. Am I wrong or am I right about that?
Let me read you some quotes in the category of "I told you so."
Okay.
When the previous administration, now give April 2023, April 2024, May 2024, June 2024, I kept telling. Now these are the public statements. I'll just read you one of them. But
these are statements you made.
Yes, publicly and privately meeting with the previous administration, I kept telling them. And here's just one of the quotes. We need to go back to basics on spending. This is on foreign aid and right? Funding and promoting polarizing and politically charged programs will mean additional cuts to the state foreign operations top line. Let me tell you why I say this. In the "I told you so" category, this is not rocket science. I was telling them that this pursuit of, call it a radical agenda, call it a woke agenda, call it of not doing the things that are the basic things that we're supposed to be doing for our national security interests when we're dealing with foreign aid and foreign policy, is going to lead to dramatic additional cuts. Hell, was I right? So, why do I mention this? Because you can't expect the American people to support some of the garbage that has been discovered. Now, we spent an hour in my bill, the subcommittee bill, discussing the thing that took the most time was that I found a $20,000, it was like, drag shows in a foreign country. We spent an hour with my colleagues on the Democratic side, said, no, that's not true, that we're not doing that, that's not true. And I kept saying, well, if it's not true, why are you upset about getting rid of it? Well, the reality is that this is the kind of stuff that the previous administration, and let me go before that, it's even before the previous administration, that the bureaucracy has been funding. The American people don't support. DOGE is finding them. They're doing it in a very aggressive way. I think it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity.
But and I'll let you respond in a second. I talked to Tom Cole about this the other day, and he said something like, no one is going to tell me what they should be cutting in my district, federal buildings, programs. without talking to me first.
Exactly.
I've been in these buildings. I know what they're used for. If they want to suggest things, because you're talking about USAID, which is one area
of many
that they're cutting, but they're taking a scalpel to a hatchet, really, to a lot. And then you guys are going to have to be, or you are going to have to be, working this into your appropriations bills next year. I mean, this is going to be a really tough thing.
Yeah, this cut and run CR is going to affect mine and Mario's constituents because the 44% cuts to the Army Corps in the unclean CR, how is that going to make sure that we don't have to deal with cuts to the Everglades restoration bill, which we've been working on for 30 years. We've had hundreds of millions of dollars appropriated. You cut 44% out of Army Corps engineers. That's not back to basics. That's pain. That's government waste defined, because we've spent joint state federal partnership billions of dollars, and we're going to let the executive branch, DOGE, just come in and decide that we're cutting 44% of those programs. We're firing 83,000 veterans. A quarter of the employees across the federal government are our veterans, and they've already fired 6,000 of those and counting. Is it back to basics to close half the Social Security offices and fire half the Social Security employees? I mean, how are they going to provide service? It's already a 2 to 4 hour wait on the phone for a senior citizen to ask a question about their Social Security benefits. This is going to hurt seniors, and the list goes on. We have to work this out together and get to the table and pass a short-term CR so we can do Congress's job.
But Mr. Diaz-Balart, so when you think of 2026 spending, do you take all these suggestions from DOGE and comb through them? I mean, what does this look like?
Yeah.
And how do you do this?
I'm not shy, and I've said this publicly, that I think, look, the Constitution is very clear. Power of the purse is Congress. Now, obviously, the administration has a major role to play, but the power of the purse putting those bills together, that's us. And so I've had more communication, for example, with the Department of State since this administration than I did in the 4 years of the previous administration, even though I chair the subcommittee that funds them.
Well, you have a friend who's at the Secretary of State.
Yeah, but I think you're right, and that's helpful, right? Somebody who's nobody better than Marco Rubio. So that's helpful. Look, we're going to have to put together the bills. We do those, by the way, from scratch, and that's something that's not known either. People talk about, Congress should do a zero-based budgeting. We attempt to do that every year through the appropriations process, and so that's why it's so important to get back to regular order. We passed all the bills out of committee, out of the House. It requires, hopefully, the Senate to do the same thing, to negotiate, and yes, the administration has a role to play because they can veto the bill, right? So we're going to have to be in constant communication. That's the way the process is designed to work. That's the way it has to work. I would also just throw out one little thing, though, that was said before by Debbie, and Debbie and I are trusted good friends, but we do have some disagreements, right? Which is the way it's supposed to be, right? But
between sister and brother, yes.
That's right. But the issue about this administration, this president being the most anti-veteran, one word: Afghanistan. And don't take my word for it, by the way. Look at the recruitment numbers in the military right now. The recruitment numbers were dismal. They couldn't get people to join the military. That's changing. You know why it's changing? Change of leadership, and the war fighters, they know that they have an administration now that is not focused on pronouns. They're focused on actually having a real military that does their job, and that's why the recruitment numbers are up. The facts are stubborn things.
We're almost out of time. I want to ask you about your home state, Florida, which now has Marco Rubio at State, Pam Bondi at Justice Department, President Trump, a resident of the Sunshine State now. Florida has Mike Waltz as DNI. Or not DNI, sorry, National Security Advisor. Florida's definitely in a position, I think, that it hasn't been in a long time, and I think one of the biggest Republican delegations on Capitol Hill is Florida. Is there something that Florida needs right now? Because I think this would be a good time to get things done. I mean, what are priorities for your state, for your districts, as we get into 2026 appropriations and, continuing with this administration?
Well, let me just say that all of what we appropriate in FY26 is meaningless if an unelected billionaire and a president who is not following Article 1 responsibilities that Congress has for the power of the purse if he just does whatever he wants with the funding in every agency, regardless of Congress's instructions. So this is not an inconsequential decision, and we have to make sure that we're protecting that power of the purse so we can take care of our constituents. But listen, we both agree, it's all about Florida. And so, no matter what administration is in charge, I'm glad that we have Floridians who we have relationships with, peppered throughout the administration. We absolutely have to make sure that we can finish Everglades restoration funding. We have vital infrastructure projects across our state that we have to bring in for a landing. One in my district is the Port Everglades dredging and deepening and widening project. We have vital healthcare needs. We certainly have to protect Medicaid because we have one of the largest Medicaid recipients population in the country. We have to defend and protect the Affordable Care Act. The largest signups of any state in the country are Affordable Care Act signups in the state of Florida. So I'm certainly hopeful.
Mr. Diaz-Balart, very quickly, because now the time is going up, which means I'm over time. So give me your...
Debbie and I have really kind of been the key folks on Everglades restoration.
We're the two senior members of the Florida delegation.
Now you're saying we're old, but it's
well,
all right. Yeah, but so yeah. I mean, there are some key projects that we have to, and I am all for, and I'm aggressive about that, defending our constitutional Article 1 powers, and that is not now. Remember when a president decided to ignore Congress and by the way, forgive student loans? And then the Supreme Court of the United States said it's unconstitutional, and then the president said, I don't care, I'm doing it anyways. That wasn't Doge, that was President Biden. Look, these are battles that we're constantly having. I will continue to defend Article 1 powers. We will work together on the key issues, and I'm optimistic as long as we get back to regular order.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Mario Diaz-Balart, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.